Hi, small tractor fans. Today I'd like to talk about using a 3-point crane and adapting it to work on a small tractor. A lot of you guys that are probably watching this have smaller tractors that are probably under the 20 horsepower range, and even with a bucket on them, you might find yourself not being able to pick up as much as you'd like. So kind of like to talk about something that somewhat just started out as an ability to carry around a 3-point crane, and then how it slowly evolved into what it is now. I think this was the first one I bought. Nope, it was actually this one, the 1-ton. I bought this quite a few years ago. It's a Harbor Freight. I got it on sale for 99 bucks. I think they still run that same deal yet, so that's something if you don't have one already, you might want to consider. And then later on I ended up getting this 2-ton crane, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences. Other than price, I don't see a lot of difference other than the rating. The tubing is slightly thicker, and like I said, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But originally I bought this crane, and this one had the folding legs, which I think is the only one you can get from them now. And where I used to live, leaving the garage was kind of on a big incline, so just pushing this thing around was kind of a pain with the wheels that spin around. It kind of goes off in different directions. It's just hard to control, and I thought, boy, it'd be nice if I could hook that onto the tractor and just move it around a lot easier in position where I want. And then so the first thing I did is build the 3-point adapter, which is nothing more than just some tubing and then the quick adapters that I welded in this configuration, and then the top point here, so that wasn't too bad. Just some strap that's similar to size that came on the crane itself. So after I got that adapted, I found out that, hey, this thing's kind of neat because you can pick up stuff and haul it around. Not a lot, because the 3-point on this particular tractor, these sizes, right around rated at like around 600, 700, 800 pounds, I think, at the 3-point here, at the end of the 3-point. But this gave you some advantage, at least if you set it down to pick up the rated load, or at least close to the rated load of the crane. So then I found out later, I got into a little bit of hauling wood and taking some trees down, and this worked really handy for being able to load logs that are kind of on the heavier side, something over 2,000 pounds or so, because I just couldn't pick it up with the other tractor I have over here. Has it's a Mitsubishi S370D Schwartz loader. I think it's rated at about 500 pounds, so by the time you put forks on it and everything, you're not lifting a whole lot out there. So it was just, this came in handy for being able to do that. So and when you buy these originally, they just come with a regular jack that you pump up. I switched that out to that pneumatic over hydraulic, which again you get from Harbor Freight. I think it runs somewhere about 80 bucks, and that gives you the ability to run it on air. Let's see, where's my air compressor? I used to tote this air compressor around. This is a portable air compressor bought from a military surplus place. Has a Yanmar like 4 or 5 horsepower engine on it, L40A, and that's a nice little unit. But again, you got to tote it around and figure out a way to haul it around. It's not something you can just pick up and haul around easily, so that has to be towed around. But it made it easier than pumping up the jacks by hand. But then I got to thinking that it would be nice to actually run this with an onboard air compressor, and was my final addition to this system. So this air compressor is rated around 11 CFM, I think, at 90 PSI. I don't know if it can do that. Being of a Chinese origin, it's hard to tell whether they actually meet the ratings or not, but it's a decent sized air compressor, as you can see. So just by the physical dimensions, it should be able to have a decent sized volume of it on it versus this air compressor, which actually doesn't work. Looks like the valves are bad, but you can see the piston in here is a lot smaller, and it's probably Chinese as well, but that takes a little while to pump up that tank. So that's it's got bad valves, so I'm actually probably just going to use that for parts someday. But anyway, this air compressor you can get for, I think, around $100 if I remember right. And a lot of this stuff, my memory's failing me, so if you go out and look and you find that my prices are way off, I apologize ahead of time. The good news is that at least this air compressor turns in the same direction. It takes a counterclockwise input, which is a clockwise output of your tractor, which is a standard direction output. So, and just to verify, when you get these air compressors, you can check the fan blades. It should be typically they're blowing onto the compressor. So, so that's some convenient information. Would it work the other way? I don't know. If they use reed valves, it might work the other way. But like, again, that's not the case. So, so you don't need to worry about it. Let's see. So some people might say, well, it's a great idea, but why don't you just use the tractor hydraulics and use the ram that has up and down, and you can run it off tractor? And that is a great idea as well. But this way you can still use the shop crane or the cherry picker, or whatever you want to call this, as a standalone unit. Just got to put the legs back on, or if you want to leave the legs on, you can do that too, and then you can still slide around and use it around your shop just as easily. I found since I built this that I really don't find applications where I'm using it by hand anymore, by standalone, because the tractor's so small you can get into smaller areas with it and back right up to what you want, and then you have the ability to roll it around as well as if you keep it on the concrete. But anyway, the other option is, like I said, to use hydraulic, and I've seen people that built them that way. And to back up here a little bit, this isn't necessarily my idea. I did build this before I saw the first one that somebody adapted out there, but I haven't seen them yet with air over hydraulic. So this is just another option, another twist, and another gives you the ability to have some onboard air, which is nice. If you just need to take it somewhere to pump up a tire, or you want to use a impact wrench or just something real quick, you have that ability to have some onboard air. And with the inverters now they make, you can put a 2 kilowatt inverter running off the battery, and I've ran 12-inch compound saws off the tractor just in places that don't have electricity, and it's just convenient. So it kind of gives you the ability to have electricity, pneumatic compressed air, and so you kind of got a one-stop shop there for being able to do stuff out in the field. So anyway, the other advantage by not having the legs on this is you can back up stuff. You guys probably use these cranes before, and you find out that you're trying to get close to something, and the legs typically stick out, 4 or 5 feet or so, and then a lot of times they're bumping into what you're trying to get up to pick up. So they work great for pulling engines out of cars and things like that, but if you want to get close to, say, pick up a block or a concrete block, or just something that's a little bit bulkier that you can't get the legs under it, this gives you that advantage, because it being hooked on the 3-point, you essentially got to pick the tractor up to get it to roll. So that takes quite a bit, and I'll have another video out here showing the point of it is to show you how much force it takes to pull smaller stumps, and I mean stumps that are less than 4 inches in diameter, because they really take a lot of force to do that, and this was just another application for that. But again, what I essentially built 2 of them for was picking up bigger logs, maybe 3-foot diameter logs, 8-foot long or 10-foot long, whatever it is, and load them on a trailer, because I have no other way of doing that. And so this kind of accomplishes that. The parts that you'll need, in addition to the compressor, you're going to need a small air tank. And before I get listing all these prices, if you're gonna do it the way I did, you're plan on $500 in parts, and then time and labor to build it. So maybe that's not worth it for most people, and I can understand that. But a lot of this stuff, unless you already have it around, like these air tanks, like I said, that little air compressor is basically failed, or either I fixed the valves in it, or I could use the tank and the other parts on it, which that makes it nice. So, but this tank is only about 30 bucks off eBay, I think. Another Chinese origin. So you're looking at that, 100 bucks for the air compressor. You'll need a PTO shaft if you don't already have one already. The quick hitch adapters, if that's the way you're going to hook it up, or just the regular straight type. You start adding all this stuff up. The price of the crane. You got some tubing. The ram itself, like I said, I think that's $80 if you use your 25% coupon that they send out every once in a while. You can probably get it for less. And the same thing with the crane. Now the two-ton crane, I think you can get that for 180, 179, somewhere around there with a coupon. I'm not sure. Looking at these real quick, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. Now, I don't know, I can't remember the original RAM rating that was on both of these, but I mean, if you look at the, I got it in metric here, since it's a Asian origin, it's probably not going to be metric, so it's a 70, basically 70 by 70 tube. See how thick it is. And I apologize, my battery's dying. It's cold out, so it's 3.7 millimeters, maybe 4 millimeters now. Yeah, 3.5 millimeters thick. This one here is a little bit thicker, maybe maybe just over 4. But I believe it's about the same size, yeah, like 2 millimeters more, so pretty much insignificant. So roughly the same size tube. I see the strap is thicker. This one's thicker than this one just by a little bit. One advantage you have on the 1 ton, it is a little bit shorter, so there's not as much force out here, which means you have less reach too. And that's something else you might want to consider if you want to be able to get more force out of this. You could probably weld some brackets onto there to also hook to. That'll increase your force or your lifting ability quite a bit, because as we all know, bending creates some of the greatest strain and stress on steel. So if you can avoid that as much as possible, you're in better shape. So yeah, 100 bucks for that, 30 bucks for this. This is an unloading valve. And if you're not familiar with pneumatics, and I wasn't that much before I got that one air compressor, because this one works the same way. So there's all kinds of flavors of air compressors and how they work. If they're electric motor, obviously just shuts the electric motor off. If you're running a gas or diesel engine, you're going to probably use an unloading valve. And all this does is it just is at a certain set pressure. It's typically got this little lever on top. When it's in the vertical position, it's in bypass. So if I started this right now, the air would just be blowing by here out one of these ports. I don't remember which one. I guess this one. And then when you put it down, it starts putting air into the tank, and then when it hits a certain set pressure, it pops this up and then unloads the compressor. Otherwise, you're going to pop a relief valve or whatever. So that's something you need. And the ones I've been buying, I think, again, off eBay, you can get them for 45 bucks, which I consider that pretty cheap considering what it is. So that's something that's a kind of a key component to this. Let me go back to the ones I have over here. Just as FYI, the way these are piped up, you have to plug. There's a sensor signal line, and then you'll plug it in this application. But this actually is meant to go to a gasoline engine. Or I guess you could do it on the diesel too, where the air, I believe the air pressure goes up when this trips or unloads, and then that's supposed to go to a diaphragm, pulls your throttle or rack setting back so it idles the engine down. So just a neat feature they seem to all have. But they make some different ones too. I originally bought let me show you this other one I bought. This one here is a unloading valve too, but it's a little bit different design. And I think it works the same, but I think this is a little cheaper. So that one will work, but this one's just set up, plumbed up better, I think, to make it more user friendly. So they're labeled in, out, and there's another supply coming in, and I'm not sure what that purpose is for, but anyway, the key component there, $45. You can just use standard copper tubing, which is common on a lot of compressor systems. As long as you keep it a small diameter, it can take the pressure. Of course, your fittings, I just got a regulator with a pressure indicator, cheap one, another one from Harbor Freight. You'll need a relief valve in case you do get an overpressure situation because the unloading valve doesn't work. I think this is set at 140 psi. This tank's rated 200 psi. Compressor is rated at 145 psi as its rated pressure, but I think I have it unloading. In fact, these valves are set from the factory, I think around 120, 125-ish there, and they're adjustable too by adjusting the spring tensions in here, or spring tension, adjusting these two fittings there. I think if you tighten this up, you got loosen the lock nut and tighten this one up, and maybe that one, I don't know. There should be some directions, or look on the internet and tell you how to use them, but I never had to touch those. They're just plug and play, and they pop off around 125 psi, which is fine for what I'm trying to do. Let's see, what else can I tell you about these? The hardest part you're gonna run into, and I wish these were both the same. This one was done a lot better, and I actually didn't execute the adaptation of the 6-line drive here. I have a small lathe now, so I think I might be able to do it, but it would take some time. This one's done probably the right way. The underneath here, and I can't show you because they're both together, but there's a slightly tapered shaft in there, and essentially this pulley has a taper fit with a left-hand thread. I think it's an 8mm by 125 or something like that. You'll need to adapt this PTO, the 6-blind PTO shaft to it, and that can be bought from, I think, surpluscenter.com. They're actually pretty cheap too, but again, if you guys are keeping track of all this and adding it up, you'll find that, like I said, you'll have $400 or $500. This one's been bored out, but it hasn't been tapered yet. For another one, if I ever get around to doing it or fixing the other one, I'll get around to that in a minute and tell you. But this is the most challenging part, because you have to mount this onto that slightly tapered shaft, and the best way of doing that is to put a taper in here, mount it on there, and then put the left-handed bolt in there. But these are, if I haven't mentioned already, they're 17 or 18 bucks from Surplus Center, but they come a little bit longer. I think they're, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches long, but there's no reason to have them that long. Just cut them down to keep it from stepping out too far. And like in this case, this one wasn't. The first one I built, first compressor I adapted. This one was, well, yeah, I guess they're not as long as they're. I can't remember, so again, apologize if all these little details aren't 100% accurate, because some of the stuff's getting kind of old and I don't remember. But this one I ended up, no, I'm sorry, yeah, it was longer. It was cut down, and actually the left-handed screw was machined into the PTO shaft, the adapter shaft, and that was my first way of attaching it. I ultimately ended up welding it to this shaft. You can see the taper here is very slight, but of course now that's welded to there, and then welding shafts that are supposed to run with little run out is kind of futile. At least I don't know a good way of welding them. Anytime you touch it with that heat, it's going to pull to one side or the other, the side that you're welding on. And I'm sure there's different techniques to straighten that up, but I don't have that expertise to do that. But again, try to mount this as in line with the tractors. There's a couple little bends the universals can take up on the shaft. And this is not a good setup right now. It's just kind of sitting on there. If you're running it in the summertime, you're running it for a long time, it's gonna, having a fan is kind of paramount. But if you're just running it for a little short picks, it's probably, you don't need a fan in here, so this part isn't absolutely critical. And you can see I already broke off one of the blades, so they're not overly durable. A couple other things I want to talk about this. Originally I set this one, so that I could pull these pins, and these are the pins that hold the legs, so I could pull the compressor off and then put the legs back in. Found out that vibrates and shakes really bad, so I ended up welding it on the other side to keep it locked down. This one I kind of changed the idea and welded it on the outside so you can slide the legs in here. Obviously you can't fold it up anymore, but in the rare event I use the legs, I can at least put them in there, although my pins probably won't go in as nice. But mounting this could probably use some improvement, but being serial number 1 and 2, it's gonna have some less than ideal things, I guess. But that's about it. I did shoot some videos, like I said, pulling some stumps, and I'll post those later. I just want to kind of go through these and let you guys know how you put them together, what you can plan on spending, how they kind of what the configuration is in this particular way I decided to put it together. You could certainly improve on this. I thought about putting 2 rams on either side to kind of double the force. Of course, you're running into load limitations and things like that, but if you had a little bit stronger crane, they definitely make stronger cranes out there, although 2-ton is more popular. But I think the 3 is pretty easy to come by. After that, you might have to get into a custom design sort of thing, but the point is you could really build something that could lift a lot for a lot less than you might find by buying a bigger tractor or loader. And then the advantage of this too is you get into those small areas where bigger tractors that can lift that kind of weight might not be able to get into. Just some of the attachments I use on this. This is your log tongs. So those are nice just for picking up some of the bigger logs if you can get them around there. So I use that quite a bit, a couple of those. And then what's really handy, and I use this for the pulling the stumps, is this pallet clamp. And I've already messed up my I don't even know the name for this thing, but bent that already. But this is kind of a handy dandy little tool you can buy, and these are cheap too. Pallet clamp, I think it is. One thing, keep in mind, these are only rated for 1 ton. So start putting them on a 2-ton, or in this case, I mean, this crane actually will do the same as that. In fact, a little bit more because the arm is shorter. But so you just got to be careful that you don't overload. Now I've had this up to probably 2-ton and it hasn't broken, obviously, but just got to think about that as you're using this stuff. Just always prepare for something that might bend or break, and make sure you're out of line of fire. Safety first in all things, right? So those are some of the attachments, so in theory, both of these together could lift close to 8,000 pounds, which I don't think I'll ever be in that situation. The biggest log I calculated, even if it's a 3-foot diameter average log that's 8 foot long, I think is only, like, if it was solid water, or basically a log of water or ice, would be close to, I think, 3,000 pounds. So easily could pick that up on either end, having one of these on either end, and then putting it on a trailer. So anyway, just want to share that with you guys. Like I said, I'll post some videos of this in action, kind of testing them out, and if you see any improvements, feel free to throw some comments out there. I always look forward to those and the other ideas people have, and it's just nice to see what's out there and share ideas. And now if I just had all the time to implement all the ideas that I've seen or thought of, that would be helpful too. So thanks again, thanks for watching, and have fun tractoring, and good luck out there.